Today's episode is brought to you by 9centprinting.com. With over 100 five-star reviews, 9centprinting.com is ready to meet all your printing needs. Are you a church plant or a small church with no copy machine? No problem. 9 Cent Printing has you covered. If you need bulletins, flyers, books, cards, offering envelopes, posters, they do it all. I know the Christian owners of this business personally, and I'm not just a fan, I'm also a customer. Fast, nationwide shipping, affordable, professional, wow printing at wow prices. Check them out at 9centprinting.com. Welcome to the Small Town Pastor Podcast. This podcast is a ministry of the Small Town Network. We exist to make disciples, train pastors, and plant churches in smaller communities. My name is Eric Nielsen. I'm joined, as always, by my trusty co-host, Tony Colomb. How are you, Tony?
I'm doing good, just in the chaos of the Christmas season, but
Bring
it's
in the
good.
energy.
Good.
And today we're joined by a longtime friend of mine, Cody Cade. How are you doing, Cody?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man. The tens of people that watch this are going to be greatly blessed by this conversation. I know it. I was joking with Cody this morning. I said, I think only my mom and my wife listen to this, so it's not true. We actually have more than that. But Cody, real quick before we kind of get you into your story, why don't you just tell us, who you are, where you live, the name of your church, just kind of any relevant personal details, and then we'll jump into your story.
Yeah, okay. My name's Cody Cade. I'm a pastor of a church called Timberhill Christian Church, and we started, what would have been early 2022, I think is when we officially launched. That's here in McMinnville, and it's been kind of an odd emotional roller coaster ever since, as ministry tends to be, but more pronounced in church planting world.
Absolutely. For sure. You've got a wife and one daughter, right?
Right, yeah. My wife's name is Sarah, and then our daughter's name is Cairo.
Nice.
Mm,
And
cool.
we were just talking about the terrible twos are upon you. So
Yeah, they are. Yes, they are.
so
And
for
they
all of our
and they
listeners, Cody is
the,
taking prayer requests.
the terrible twos, and then they transfer into the terrorist
The
threes.
terrorist threes.
Oh, good.
I
So
like it.
lots to look
Yeah,
forward to.
yeah, you'll make it.
Well, I was a pastor in McMinnville for 17 years, and one of the things that I did is I like to have summer interns, and most of my interns came from Boise Bible College. And Cody has the rare distinction of being the only summer intern we had twice. We had him for 2 summers. And
Oh,
the funny part of that was the second summer he came, I wasn't there. I basically had him come in as my intern when I went on sabbatical. And so he was like an extra body, on the ground, like while I was off playing and enjoying the gift of a lifetime. My church gave me after 10 years, they gave me a 2 month sabbatical and we did a road trip with our kids all over the national parks. And I knew our church was in good hands because Cody Cade was there. So do you have that distinction? You're either like a hero or a sucker. I don't know what you.
that's why he was willing to come back a second time. He knew there was
Yeah,
going to be a sabbatical
because I was
involved.
going to be gone.
So,
Yeah, that's probably
well,
right.
after that first summer, I don't know. He'll be gone most of the summer. Well, okay.
I'm going to be gone. Okay, yeah. This is like my favorite thing about Cody is that if I we our church was pretty close to McDonald's. And so if I
Oh
would ever
yeah,
say like,
yeah.
hey, you want to go grab a Coke? He said yes every time. It didn't matter if it was 10 a.m. or and then we'd walk over. And some of my favorite conversations with Cody was walking to McDonald's to get a Coke. The next intern I had was like one of those guys that I only drink water. And so I tried to be like, hey, do you want to go grab a Coke? And he's like, no. And I'm like, I hate you. You're no fun. I feel like you're judging me for
It's
drinking
it's
soda.
not the point. The Coke
Yeah,
is not the point, bro.
that's the relationship. Yeah. All right. Well,
Brick
Cody,
wall.
I kind of know like your story, but I think you've got a kind of a cool testimony. And I'd love you just to talk about where you grew up and like what the role that faith played in your life, kind of your journey to becoming a disciple of Jesus. So start anywhere you want, tell it however you want.
All right. Yeah, okay. So it's it's a complicated story with several different layers to it. I'm not going to be able to get into all of them, but
Sure.
big picture, I was born and raised here in the Willamette Valley in Oregon, and my parents divorced when I was 2 or 3, I think. I don't really remember it.
Hmm.
Um, my dad's side of the family was religious in the sense that they uh, knew the language of church, knew the name of Christ. My grandpa was a pastor, and my grandma has always been a very strong believer. But there was a lot of addiction in my family,
Mhm.
and all the turmoil that kind of goes along with that. And so we moved around quite a bit when I was younger. My mom's side of the family has always been really reserved and unwilling to have any sort of conversation about really anything of substance. So politics or religion would certainly fall into that category. So it was sort of the attitude towards it was sort of if that's what you need, but
Yeah,
otherwise it's kind of intellectually stupid and
yeah,
superstitious sort of attitude. They weren't that expressive, but that was
right.
the flavor of it. So I kind of grew up in that sort of context. My dad's family was really expressive, and my mom's family was really not. So growing up, I had a lot of confusion about the way that I was supposed to be. Was I supposed to be outspoken or was I supposed to be reserved? And all of that sort of led into I had kind of a general sort of curiosity about life. I still have a lot of that. And I think along those lines, I was always sort of sensitive about the Lord and discussion about the Lord. But for the most part, what I knew about him was more informational and secondhand and wedded in my mind to kind of a spirit of anger about the way that that played out in the lives of the people that were around me in many cases. So when I got into high school, particularly, I became increasingly dissatisfied with the story that I was being told about life and the point of life. In high school, you're kind of guided towards, get a wife and a job and a car and a house, and that's fine. But it's I was left asking the question of, well, what happens then? What happens after that?
Yeah, for
And
sure.
it did not seem to me like there were that many people that were willing to confront that question, or I'm guessing that most people had thought about it, but were just unwilling to follow it to its logical end. But I was cursed with a curiosity, so I followed it to its end, and that led me into kind of a form of nihilism,
Mm,
where it seemed to me like if it were true that material things were all that there were, all that existed, and life as I knew it was mostly pain,
mm,
and there was no transcendent meaning, then it seemed to me that the logical conclusion to that was suicide.
mm.
And that was not an emotional conclusion. That seemed to me like the logical end.
Logical, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Right.
And so I remember thinking early on, like, okay, uh, maybe I'll maybe I'll plan that,
Mm.
go through with it.
Wow.
And I had redone the math in my head a few times where I was like, okay, yeah, the logic checks out there. And so I can remember that I went to start thinking about how to do it. And the more that I did that, the more that I recognized there's this sort of internal voice that was like, don't, this is a terrible idea.
Mm,
And I didn't have a explanation for where that voice would come from
mm,
How
because
old were you? How old were you at this point?
I was probably 15 or
mm.
16,
So
somewhere
that's
in there.
super interesting, man, that like the
Yeah.
logic of there's nothing but what we can see should lead to kind of almost a self-destructive, like why bother? What's the point? Right? I think
Well,
that's
if
where
your
that,
life is going poorly,
especially, yeah.
yeah,
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So I just think that's interesting that as a young kid, you could see like the pointlessness of or the futility of life if this is all there is, and you're not and a good qualifier, and you're not enjoying. It's not going well.
right. Yeah, I
Why
think the
bother?
logic is true in any case. It's harder to get to the end of that logic, though, if life is entertaining enough to be distracting away from that end.
That's well said.
Oh, keep going. I just wanted
Yeah,
to.
that's okay. Anyway, so I had reached the logic of this nihilism, I guess is maybe the best way to describe it. But when I thought about going through with that, there was an element inside me, a voice inside me that was like, this is a bad idea. And I didn't have a category for that voice.
Hmm.
So that became for me the first real piece of evidence that there was something outside of
Hmm.
nothing. There was something rather
Wow.
than nothing. So it became what I would later discover is my first real piece of evidence for a God of some kind.
Hmm.
But it was more than that, because what that told me just by deduction was that this is a God that cared about life. And
Hmm.
so the voice was revealing some things about the nature of who this God was. And so I, in high school, began to study a lot of religion and philosophy, looking for different sorts of answers. And that led me into reading people like C.S. Lewis and G.K. Chesterton and Josh McDowell,
Hmm.
people of the like, well-known names in evangelical circles. And at the end of, and I was probably 18, I think, when this happened, but at the end of reading Mere Christianity, which took me months to get through.
Yeah, as a teenager,
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
it's a hard read. Yeah.
Yeah, it took me months to get through, but at the end of it, I can remember being just annoyed, really angry,
Hmm.
because I felt like I was cornered by his logic. Like if I felt like there was no real way out of the position that he
Huh.
put me in. So I felt like I was in a chess match where we were
With
playing a
C.S.
game of
Lewis,
logic. Yeah.
dude,
And
Huh.
I, at the end of
your
the book,
host.
just had no more moves. So,
That is a
so
fantastic description of that. Like that I was in a chess
Yeah.
game that couldn't out of moves. That's great.
Well, this is a fascinating testimony so far. I love this because it's like you have thought through the process at this point in your life of if all there is material and then material is gone at some point, then this is the logical conclusion is a self-destructive type of pattern. And
right,
then you start reading this other material because this voice in your head is pleading with you not to do that, not to go through with the logical conclusion of your other thought process. And then C.S. Lewis starts making the case for God, and you're like, okay, now I'm opening my thoughts to another logical position.
yeah.
I just,
Well, his maybe the way to connect those dots, his one of his main arguments, maybe one of the most famous that comes from that book, is his observation that you can't know what a crooked line is unless there's some intrinsic nature of understanding what a straight line would look like. And he's
mm,
talking about morality, of course, and that was the voice.
yeah,
What is this thing inside of me or inside of people generally that recognizes that some things are intrinsically bad, inherently
mhm,
evil?
right,
And his explanation of where that would come from, I think was pretty convincing, was pretty compelling.
yeah,
I actually still think that his argument about the nature of where morality comes from is one of the most compelling evidences
mm,
for a Christian God.
mm.
So
All right,
anyway,
all the listeners, go pick up that book.
yeah, a terrific book, a terrific
Seriously,
book. A
sorry.
heavy read, but a good book.
Mhm,
Anyway, so I get to the end of that book and I'm cornered by the logic of this, but it in Christianity, as we well know, it's not just information.
mm,
So I'm learning at the same time that it's not just a matter of my mind being in alignment with the Lord. Like my will doesn't really want to either. So
sure, sure,
so I was not happy with this kind of conclusion, because the implication is that I would have to live a certain way relative to
right,
his standards and commands, and I didn't really want to do that. So
right, because it's a call not just to keep existing,
right. Yeah, it wasn't just a
or
hey, I need you to acknowledge that I'm here
right,
kind of thing. So I can remember that the moment though when I got done with that book, uh I had this it was the only time this has ever happened in my life where there was like a vision kind of thing. I don't even know if I would call it that, but it was something like that, where the thought came into my head that it was real, and it was the first time in my life that I really believed it as not just a hypothetical, not just a possibility, but the most likely conclusion based on the information that I had been presented so far in life. And so it was the first time in my mind that it was like a real thing.
mm,
And the moment that happened, I was like instantly in this vision where I was in the presence of Jesus. I was on my knees and I was clutching his waist. I was like holding on to his waist for like dear life. And I was too afraid to look up at him, but I was also too afraid to let go.
Mm,
And I was in this kind of weird uh, position where both things were true at the same time.
mm.
And then I can remember that he put his hand on my head and he said, "You now know what others need to know." And that was it. That was the end of the thing. And
Was
then
this like in the like waking hours, or like in your bed at night, or like where did this happen?
it was I so I had just finished reading C.S. Lewis in the bathroom. I came out of the bathroom. And I was in the living room and I was walking across the living room towards the kitchen, and all of this is taking place in my head as I'm walking towards the kitchen.
Wow.
So the thing that I'm describing, I can still remember standing in the living room facing the front window where the door was when all this took place. So it's just like a moment in time that it happened.
Mm.
And I would like to say that I, fell in love with Jesus right at that moment,
Yeah.
but that's not what happened.
Yeah.
Sure.
So what I did instead, like a moron, I went the other direction. So I thought
Mm,
I reacted to this like emotionally and selfishly, and I thought I'm going to go the other direction about as hard
mm,
as I can. So for about 6 months after that, I did exactly that, which I knew I was not supposed to do.
mm.
And every time that I did, uh, the Lord was right there, like, you're not, this is not going anywhere.
Shaking my
And we
head.
both know
Yeah.
it.
Mm,
So, so after much conviction and much shame, I eventually surrendered to the Lord, but didn't want to do ministry like at all. I was terrified of public speaking, didn't really want to have to go through the process of learning the Bible because it seemed to me often confusing and even archaic.
mhm,
And so I, for a while, for a couple of years, just did construction, which I loved. I love the math. I love solving things with my hands. I like seeing the results of a
mm.
day's work. All of that was true in construction. Then the Lord brought me into ministry, but I don't know if you want to get into that quite yet.
Well, let's talk about
Mm.
so you're talking about kind of living in a family situation that's a little rough, and you guys were moving around and stuff. Did you actually like surrender to Christ in high school while you're still living with your family, or is this later on, like after you already started working in construction? Like what was the time frame of like when you would say I really gave myself to Christ?
I was living on my own by the time I was 16, I think, 16 or
Wow.
17.
Wow.
Wow.
And I would not say that I got serious about Christ then. I would say he became m more of an interest to me. It was a riddle that I was trying to solve at that point. It was a question, equation that I was trying to get to the end of. And that took a lot of time, a lot of questions, a lot of reading, a lot of a lot of thinking about the arguments presented from atheists and some of the counter arguments from Christians, and then trying to weed out which one of those were coherent and not just emotional blackmail.
Yeah.
There's a
Mm,
lot of that, kind of thing. But
mhm,
that takes a lot of time to get through, especially as a teenager. So I would not say that I became serious, really serious about following Christ until I was probably 19 or 20.
Well,
mm.
let's pick up there. So, you're doing construction, you're 19, 20 years old. Connect the dots for us between like where you were at there and like how you ended up at Boise Bible College
Yes,
studying for
please.
ministry. What was the pathway
Yeah.
to all
Seems
that?
like a
Yes.
huge jump.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let me just say at the outset that in retrospect, I feel like the Lord has a sharp sense of humor.
Okay.
Uh,
Explain.
before doing construction, I worked at Lowe's for a while. And at that point, I was already a serious believer. I was learning to become more serious. Like I was going through the process of trying to surrender all of the habits and the patterns of thinking that lead to those habits to the Lord and have those things be shaped and informed by His Word. But I didn't know the Word that well at the time, so I was doing a lot of that. I was devoted to reading the Word and trying to put that into action. And while I was working at Lowe's, there were some people there who, so I got promoted from pushing carts to leading the garden department and then the flooring department. And there were some people there around me that were kind of telling me like this is a great path to be on. Like you could be a zone manager in no time. And I
Woo!
once again found myself asking like, well, who cares?
Yeah.
What is the logical conclusion of
Yeah,
this?
I once again was just like I mean it was flattering. It was nice to they're telling me this was, years ago, so 70,000 years ago was a lot, but they were like, you could make $70,000 and be in charge of these people. And then I thought, well, so what? It's Lowe's. Uh, so um so I eventually left Lowe's and then got into construction. And then I went through that cycle kind of again where construction was going really well, and I got into prevailing wage jobs where I was making just a huge amount of money for a kid.
Yeah.
I didn't have any tie downs, so I was making at several points $50 to $70 an hour
Mm.
with prevailing wage and hazard pay and per diems and all that kind of put
And that's
together.
like back in the early 2000s, right?
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
right, yeah.
Wow.
Probably
Wow.
2003 or 4 when that was going on. But again, I was left kind of thinking about where does this end, though? And that I can remember being really annoyed at that also. Because that didn't check out to me either because I liked what I was doing. I liked the people that I was working with. It was leading to or would have led to a decent life as far as material things go, but there's this thing in me that was like none of this really matters though.
Mm.
And at that same time, a cousin of mine was involved in this youth group, and they had invited me to go in this youth group, and I never really was a part of a church or a youth group, or I didn't know that world or much of that world. I did peripherally, but not as like a direct experience. So I went and told them that I would be maybe interested in going on this because I felt like the Lord wanted me to go on this, but at the same time, I had just started this new job in construction, a new job site with a new boss. And I thought, there's no way he's going to let me go. So
Mm.
my bargain with the Lord was I'll go and ask him, and knowing that he's going to say no, and then I won't have to go. So, so I made this bargain with the Lord, and I went.
Sucker.
And his name in construction, we all called him Angry Pete, just to give you a flavor of what this guy was like. So I approached Angry Pete one day, and I'm like, "Hey, listen, I want to go on a mission trip." And he's like, "Okay," just as just as nonchalant about it as you could possibly be. Almost like he was like, "Okay, yeah, I was waiting for you to ask just to give you permission to go." And I thought, "Okay, Lord." So
That's
I ended up
wild.
going on this mission trip with this youth group that I was not really a part of to Mexico. And
Mm.
that mission trip just changed my entire outlook
Mm.
on just about everything.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to Mexico and we built houses for these family, but house is probably too generous of a term. It's more
Yeah.
like a garden
With
shed.
with a more
Yeah, with a mower.
down
Yeah,
Yeah.
down in Tijuana. Yeah.
yeah,
I've
yeah,
done that multiple times.
Yep. Same
Yeah.
yeah,
here.
yeah. I've done 4 of those since then, but our first one was with a mower. I,
11 by 22 slab. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I
Yep.
can I can just remember being surprised at how grateful they were
Mm-hmm.
at what most of us
Mm-hmm.
would be whining about, would be
Mm-hmm.
complaining about, myself included.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had this incredible sense of fulfillment of wanting to serve the Lord in this way. And on that mission trip, I got to have a lot of conversation with people about theology and how to connect the dots in scripture and what that would look like. And I just totally fell in love with
Mm.
that kind of conversation. It was just intellectually, it was the most satisfying thing I had ever
Mm.
come across. And still is to this day. It's really the only topic that I have ever found that is like fully engaging to me all the time.
Mm.
So I fell in love with this topic, this conversation, then and then went back to construction for a couple of years. And once again, my cousin went to Boise Bible College, and I had heard about it, and my grandma was kind of talking to me about it, and I was like, that's, terrific, cool beans kind of thing. And once again, I felt like the Lord was like, you should go check it
Mm,
out. And once again, I was like, no, thank you. I've got my
Yeah.
own plans going here, Lord. So
mhm.
I made this bargain with him that I would go for a semester and then go back to doing construction. And when I went, I just like that conversation came back into view, but with much more serious, much more godly people.
Yeah.
Mm,
And it just was like intoxicating. I just loved it.
You found your
mm.
sweet spot. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
Well,
ended up,
you're still like a guy that I mean, like we do for people that are listening, we do like sermon clubs and Cody sometimes joins us on those. And all of the guys that are in my sermon clubs are like, is Cody coming back? Is that guy Cody going to be there? Because Cody, like, he's so well read and so well studied, and he always
Mm.
seems to bring up something. And so, like, the fact, just to like picture you like landing in Bible college and just being like this whole world that you probably didn't even know existed.
I did not. Yeah, I did
And it
not.
just must have been like such joy for you just to like, this is amazing. I can imagine you just like taking it all in.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It was like, it's hard to put it to analogy. It was like starving to death and then stumbling into like a five-star restaurant.
Mm, mm.
My very first class was Acts with Terry Stein, who's no longer there, but
yeah,
Right.
the information was presented to me in not a flippant buzzword Christian language kind of way, which is often the way it's presented in
right.
churches.
Right.
It was like handled responsibly and seriously, and it was coming from someone who just loved the Lord and loved the students, and the marriage of those two things was like this is I want to be that,
That's a
Mhm.
whatever
great
that
way to
is.
describe Terry because
He's
he's that
great.
guy that is like he's super knowledgeable, right? Like you'd expect a professor to be, but one of the most genuinely nice people I've ever
Mhm.
met.
Yeah.
I mean, like
Yeah.
one of those like Mr. Rogers characters that you're like, this guy is too good to be true. He's just so nice and so
Yeah.
affirming. So yeah, when you meet people that have the information and they actually like live it out, it shows
Yeah,
in their character. That's a great combination, obviously.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I
The
went
better
from
apologetic for sure.
yeah, 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 very convincing, very compelling. And then I went from Terry Stein to Mr. Cornett, who's also no longer there. And Mr. Cornett, maybe more than anyone else, just
Mm,
had such an impact on me. This was a man that was so full of wisdom,
mm,
so in love with the Word of God, but also somehow like the most humble person I've ever met.
mm,
So
Yeah.
he knew the most about the subject that I thought was the greatest, and yet acted like he was the least.
Mm,
mm.
And it just was, man, I just love him. Still love him.
that's great,
Right.
man.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what year did you graduate
Awesome.
then?
2013.
I know I always have to think about mine too. So
Do
just
you, do you
for
know
you were a
do you know Corey
non-traditional.
DeForest?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I love Corey.
He's our associate pastor.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I was friends
Yeah.
with him. Me and my wife
Yeah.
Sarah both were friends with him. So
That's
I mean, he still
fantastic.
could be. I mean, you could probably call him.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, you'll
yeah.
have to
Let's
come up and hang out sometime. We'll get
yeah,
some
let's get
lunch.
him on the phone.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Hey, just for the timeline, so like you were an older student. So by the time you
Yeah,
went to Boise, how old were you?
I was 25.
Yeah.
Mm,
So having done construction for 4 years,
Yeah.
and then went when I was 25.
mhm,
So obviously you went to Boise Bible College, you graduated, and then you started ministry. And you did a couple internships with me. You worked at a church, a small community near in Yamhill County at that church for a lot of years. And
Hmm.
then you eventually planted a church, which we'll talk about in our next episode. But I have this memory of you that's one of my favorite memories of you. And you, even as a college kid, you were a great preacher. You're a really good preacher. You're a Bible preacher. You're not a fluff guy or a hype guy. You really get up and like you know how to unfold like the scripture to people. And I was so proud of you as an intern watching you preach. And as an older guy now, like my joy now is not getting to preach every Sunday because I don't. I get to platform young guys at my church and let them preach, and I just love it. And I have this memory of you getting up on a Sunday morning and preaching this sermon, and you were very nervous, and you had this very well constructed sermon, and I'm watching, and you're just crushing it. But the one thing that you hadn't anticipated is how to end the sermon. So, which is funny because young preachers oftentimes they know how to get into it, but they don't know how to get out of it. And so you literally said at the end of your sermon, you got to the end of your notes and you looked down and there was nothing there, and you looked up and then you said, and that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah.
And then you walked off the stage. It was so
Yeah.
great, man.
I would like to tell you that I had learned from that, but
Oh my gosh, it's so funny. I was like, no way. That's all I've got to say about that. I
Yeah.
dropped the mic. It was
yeah,
so
well,
funny.
I appreciate up to that part. I appreciate the compliments leading up to that.
I know, man. Hey, it was cute, man. I mean, like you're this young dude and you're trying to like learn to be a preacher, and you just had this one, this little snafu, and I'm sure everybody thought it was, adorable. This young preacher guy. So it's a good story. Don't be embarrassed by it.
Yeah. Well, I have many more, much more embarrassing stories from preaching.
But fortunately for you, we are out of time. So why don't I do our wrap up, and then we'll get out of this. Thanks for listening, everybody. I want to thank Cody for coming on, and again, stay tuned for the part 2 of that. We want to ask you to be sure to check out our sponsors at 9centprinting.com. If you like what we're doing, please like or subscribe wherever you watch or listen. And if you're interested in Small Town Network, you can find us online at smalltownnetwork.com. If you believe in the importance of planting disciple-making churches in smaller communities, we'd love you to consider partnering with us in prayer and financial support. You've been listening to the Small Town Pastor Podcast.
Today's episode is brought to you by 9centprinting.com. With over 100 5-star reviews, 9centprinting.com is ready to meet all your printing needs. Are you a church plant or small church with no copy machine? No problem. 9cent Printing has you covered. If you need bulletins, flyers, books, cards, offering envelopes, posters, they do it all. I know the Christian owners of this business personally, and I'm not just a fan, I'm also a customer. Fast, nationwide shipping, affordable, professional, wow printing at wow prices. Check them out at 9centprinting.com.